Hi, Holly. How are you?
Good, Brandon. How's it going?
I'm doing great. Super excited today. We're going to be talking about emotions, everybody's favorite topic.
Sure.
Yeah. We're going to be exploring, why it's important to feel, why it's okay to feel, and that journey it takes us on that actually brings us more clarity. Kind of piggybacking off of last week, where we're talking about how to find clarity. Part of that is allowing yourself to have emotions and allowing them to flow through you so you can get to the other side of them. So, we're calling this go with what you feel with the goal of getting to the other side of the heavy emotions and basically so we can process them, let them go and take some new actions rather than just running in these predictable patterns. This frame of permission to evolve is really it's identifying the things that keep us stuck, that prevent us from moving forward to leveling up, especially from an identity standpoint of like, I've been living the same life for so long and I don't know what it's like without that. If I want better results, if I want to achieve something bigger, I need to grow out of some things. I need to unlearn some things. I need to shift how I'm seeing these things. And part of that is our relationship with emotions. It's pretty common, especially in our culture, to kind of view them as bad or inconvenient. And so it's
Inefficient?
yeah, inefficient, like all those things. It's we're not robots, we're humans, and so it's just going in and exploring that a little bit. And we also, at the end of the day, we want to see them as actually that's our path forward. It actually produces better results. It increases performance. There's many benefits that come from just being really in tune with yourself because it is this feedback that's happening all the time. And so, we're going to be opening that up. So any thoughts on that idea?
No, I mean, you and I know each other a little bit, so to me, I'm like, oh, this is going to be interesting and good. I can definitely see though how some people might be really uncomfortable with
Mhm.
the thought of uh, sitting in an emotion or letting it be.
I believe emotional regulation is the most valuable skill you can ever acquire. And I don't think anybody's ever taught that. So you kind of have to, there's becoming more and more an awareness on it. But so to regulate emotions, to basically develop self control, we need to get good at feeling them and understanding them. That's how we can actually create more predictable results in our lives is if we understand our emotions. Now it's like I know where I'm acting from. But when these things are left in a subconscious place of like I feel something and then I react to it, which is what a pattern is, basically I'm living kind of in this little bubble. I have these predetermined responses to everything, and so I'm not really in tune with things. I'm living very subconsciously rather than consciously. Our emotions are this guide for us to gain a deeper understanding of ourselves and what we've been through and perhaps what's unresolved in our past. That's very key to our conversations is that's where we get stuck. And so if we can start to unpack that and understand why this is such an important idea, and that is kind of shifting the perception around feeling emotions. So I think a lot of us are afraid to feel because it can be very intense. And I go through still regularly. So I go through bouts of things where earlier this week, for example, I felt like, the rug got pulled underneath me a little bit. That created this reaction within me. And so this plays on a lot of old stories of will things ever happen for me? Like, will I ever have consistency in my life? Like, like all these things flood to the surface with that feeling, right? It's allowing me to actually be overtaken by those feelings to understand them and also get to this place of like, that's not actually true anymore. It's like the emotions, they're waves and the reminders of our past. So I have these triggers in my body, and that's basically the things I'm trying to protect myself from. I've had some sort of pain or trauma or something that's happened in my past. I told myself a story about that, and I started to lock that pattern into my system. I formed beliefs based on those variables. I started to form beliefs about what I believe is true for my life. That's where we start to build limitations into our identity. And it all starts with the heavy emotion. I'm making judgments about the heavy emotion. And now I'm cementing that belief into place. And now everywhere I go, I'm looking for that to be confirmed. I'm looking for validation behind my beliefs. That's what keeps us trapped is we don't see any other way because I've drawn the same conclusion over and over again about similar situations, and my feelings are are telling me that's true. It's left in a negative place. So a negative emotion that I've locked into place that's going to create a limitation. It's going to create a limiting belief that's going to prevent me from seeing opportunities and moving forward. What we're trying to do here is unlock that piece of like, okay, I've stuck emotions, and if I don't give myself permission to feel those, they stay stuck. And I can do all the thinking I want. I can do all the intellectualizing things I want, but I'm not integrating anything because it's stuck in my body. I can learn all the techniques and all the stuff. I can learn all the knowledge I feel like I need to move forward, but I'm not moving forward because something inside me tells me it's not safe. That's why we got to feel that stuff is so we can move the energy because it's if it's stuck in that same place, my mind creates all these workarounds where I'm not actually addressing the issue. I'm trying to work around the issue, and that's going to continually lead me back down the same path. I'm just going to be doing the same thing over and over again, just a similar variation of it. So when we feel emotions, we get the flow back. We're creating this energy movement so that I can channel that in a more productive way. We go in and we unlock these things, and then they may flood to the surface once in a while. That's the only way that we begin to understand ourselves because it's like if I have these stuck emotions and I've told myself the same story over and over again, there's almost a detachment from that. There's like a numbing things out. There's an acceptance of this is just the way it is. But if I unlock the emotion and I start to feel what's behind it, it's going to be heavy, but my thoughts are going to be a reflection of what I have stored there. That's going to be giving me information and insights into myself that are going to allow me to move forward in a new way once I understand those things. Because if not, they're left in the subconscious place where I'm dissociated from them and I'm living on autopilot and I'm doing half the things I'm doing. I don't even know why I'm doing. It's just because it's what's trained in our nervous system. It's just because they're conclusions we've made earlier in life. Some of those things work. A lot of those things aren't optimal. Like, I would say pretty much everything is going to need some adjustment. There just might be drastic shifts we need to make in certain areas. And that's what we would call a weakness. So something you continually struggle with over and over again. And it's become very painful and you expect bad results there. A lot of disappointments, letdowns have happened. Now that's like a painful area where the more painful it is, the more I'm going to try and avoid it.
I'm just trying to think of like a tangible example. And so when you said that, I thought, well, could that look like not asking, like avoiding asking for something, or you've been told no so many times and that you just sort of give up ever asking
Mhm.
for what it is that you want. And maybe that was like comes from early childhood or something like that. But I don't know. Do you have like a tangible example?
Yeah, it's going to be kind of repeat instances where I've drawn the same conclusion because it seems like this is a theme in my life, right? Those things are going to be coming from childhood. Generally, that's the stuff that's out of our control. It just happened. We're dealt a certain hand. We're just trying to learn how to survive. And so we adapt to those situations. If I get shut down around a certain area, that is going to be because generally caregivers or authority figures aren't allowing that energy to flow. So this is, limiting and beliefs are being impressed upon me. And there's a design to it, right? It's just like, yeah, we have to exist in this family system. But this work we're talking about, okay, I want to open things up and I want to do things different. My training is going to be that. It's going to be like, yeah, like I'm not allowed to have this, or this is bad, or I'm not good enough, or I don't deserve this. It's going to be kind of shame-based programming that's going to be shutting me down. And that's going to be preventing new action. It's not safe to do this. If I do take this action, there's going to be some sort of negative consequence. That could be, the ability to, pursue something or take a risk. That could be, to follow a passion. Let's say I'm like from a very intellectual academic family, and let's say I'm an artist and I want to start a band or something, right? It's like
Okay. Yes.
there's going to be like shame around that, right? Of that's not what we do, or that's not a real job, or that's not a career, right? So those are the ways it manifests. Is we're not able to move with things because there's a shame around them. So it basically puts me in conflict with what I'm passionate about. So I like many dreams die before they even start because of those types of things, right? Where it's like I was told I can't have this or I shouldn't have this or it's wrong for me wanting to do this. In that place, it's like, well, all these things get internalized and I keep building stories around like why it's not possible for me. The way we wake anything back up, the way we start to reconnect is we have to move those stuck emotions because those emotions it's locked in place and I keep telling myself the same story about it, right? So it's not moving at all. It's all staying there. It is questioning it, being like, why do I feel this way? Like, what, why do I believe this? Like, digging deeper, where did these things come from? Because they had to come from somewhere. Whatever's inside of us, it's through lived experience that we've come to those conclusions. We're just trying to question, like, okay, the things I believe are in direct opposition to what I want. So something's got to give there. It's either I can try and manipulate things outside me, which generally creates a lot of problems, or I can change myself internally. I can change how I relate to situations. I can start to free myself up mentally and emotionally. And now I start to straighten out those conflicts so that I can start to align with what I want. That's just where am I denying myself? Where am I not going with what I feel? When we're talking about going with what I feel, like, there's a part of you that, you know exactly what you want and you would pursue it wholeheartedly if there weren't these limitations that bump up against that. The training that we've all had that creates these conflicts of like, I can't do anything outside what's normal or this predictable safe path. It's shifting our relationship with risk and what it means to be happy and what do I actually want out of life, not like what am I supposed to want? It's asking those deeper questions. We have these suppressed emotions that happen because of society or, kind of group consciousness of this is the normal path. And if you do something off of that, there's generally judgments that and the judgments keep you in place. If the judgments are so strong that I feel like I can't own my dream, like I need to stay safe, basically I'm going to be suppressing all my desires. That's always going to make us miserable. But, it's not going to lead to happiness. That's not going to lead to anything kind of meaningful where I feel like I chose my path and I pursued it to my fullest ability. Because like when we do that, we do go through this gauntlet. And I've mentioned that several times now where it's the breaking off. We do get battle tested. Okay, I'm going to branch out and this is terrifying. And so it starts creating all these feelings of, oh, I should just go back to the normal thing. To conquer those emotions, we need to get them out of that suppressed or avoided place and we need to confront them. We need to move through them because that stagnant energy that's got tons of protection mechanisms wrapped up in it. And that's going to be battling me every step of the way as long as I try to take some different action. So that's the willpower idea of like, I can try and override that stuff, but eventually it's going to get the best of me. If I'm in stress for a prolonged period of time, I'm probably going to be falling back into old patterns. But the way we unlock any of this is we give ourselves permission to feel it. And it's also allowing ourselves, no matter what comes up, it's okay that I feel this way because, you feel that way. We have this idea of, oh, if somebody's like hurt us, the way this looks is, oh, I hate this person, but then maybe I don't feel like it's okay to hate somebody. But now I start this like internal, I feel this way, but I'm like telling myself it's not okay to feel this way. The truth is if we follow that, if we acknowledge, yeah, this person hurt me, it was really painful. And because of that, I've formed some sort of hatred. If I allow myself to sit with that and feel that, I'm going to get to the other side of it where I'm like, yeah, I don't really want to feel that way anymore. So that's kind of like, if I give myself permission to be in that place and, we're not saying act on things. We're not saying be destructive or hurt other people. We're saying like, I might need to be in a place for a little bit because that's going to validate what I feel. Okay. When I validate what I feel, now I'm accepting what I feel. And in that acceptance, I start to strip the energy out of it, the negative energy, and I start to move through it a little bit better. We'll notice when I allow myself to feel emotion, they're waves, they don't last forever, but me resisting and pushing against them prolongs them. Okay. So now it's like I'm feeling bad on a regular basis and I continually tell myself the same story and I keep locking these emotions away because I'm not allowing myself to move through it. I'm not learning any lessons there either. So wisdom is an emotional understanding of an experience, meaning something was painful for me. I did that where it was overwhelming and I stored all this negative information, but then I went back and I unpacked it. I went and looked at it. I tried to figure out how can I see this differently in a way that frees me up from it. I'm going to see that this painful experience actually had a positive impact on me in some way. Everything has both sides of the equation. And so we're completing that cycle by taking a look at that bigger picture to be like, well, this pain drove me to do these things, which actually led to improvements in my life. But as long as I'm holding on to the pain still, that cycle's incomplete. Okay. So I haven't gained wisdom yet because I'm still holding on to the anger and resentment or whatever it is. Okay. And so that's what healing is. Now the full circle piece is when I develop compassion. Okay. So that's when I see like this person was acting from this place. They were in pain and that's why they created pain for me. Right. And we start to trace it back to what was going on in their life. Where were they functioning from? And that it actually wasn't anything personal. When we start to gain that compassion for whatever or whoever hurt us, it's now I'm starting to process and let go of the emotions and I neutralize them. In that process, now it's like I've expanded my perception around the situation and I gain wisdom. Now I know how to I understand people functioning from that place and I also understand that situation better. Now it's like I'm not going to be running into the same problem. I mastered that problem. Now I can move forward and learn my next lesson. It's the emotions of taking it from a place of tension and stress, feeling it fully, and then shifting our mind about it. That cycle is the growth process. That's actually how we learn anything, is we move through the tension until we get some clarity. A good example would be, let's say you start a new job. In the beginning, there's tension. It's like uncertainty. I'm not sure what's going on. As I kind of sit in that tension and I get the information, I'm starting to learn how to interact in that environment. Now the tension starts to dissipate. I'm not in the stress and anxiety because like I'm starting to get my feet beneath me. That's what we do with everything is it starts in tension. And if I stay in the tension and I'm not moving forward, the tension becomes permanent and I just tell myself I can't do something. If my mind's open enough to how do I get up to speed with whatever the situation is? How do I let it go? How do I process it? How do I develop the courage to take these steps? It's going to be me integrating new information that's going to make me feel more relaxed about the situation. That's where I'm going to be gaining confidence.
Yeah. Yeah,
So
that makes
it's
sense.
it's working through the tension with this growth mindset of I'm feeling tense. My job is to work through the tension or the emotion so that I can get up to speed with this so that I can return back to equilibrium or this relaxed state.
Okay, so when we think about becoming self-validating, because that's essentially what you described there, was the process of being self-validating in your emotions and allowing them to come through. If somebody's caught and unable to do that, unable to self-validate, is there a practice? Is there something you would recommend? Obviously, you can hire a coach, you can work with a group. There's a ton of options, but do you have sort of a in the moment, you're trying to feel through it, you're trying to be self-validating and there's some way that can help you do that.
It's very context based. So, there's going to be situations where it's not appropriate to dive into your emotions, right? Like, you do have to get through the day sometimes. But it's implementing resets and it's also this like being conscious of like, hey, this really hit me. I don't want to pretend like that didn't happen, right? So I might just be like, well, I need to kind of take a mental note of like this hit me, and so this is probably something I want to look at rather than just suppress it and just like leave it in that state. So environment's important. If I'm at work or if I'm in the middle of something, I might have to power through it, but then it's just like, okay, when it's time to unwind, I want to take a look at this stuff. And so that is going to be journaling. It might be having conversations. We commonly see this as like venting, right? With family members or friends or whoever. It's just like something it's stressing me out. And so I'm going to talk about it. What we get here is this. So when we talk about something, we're trying to organize our thoughts. But the problem with something like venting is going to be, I'm just like trying to get the energy out, but I'm not examining anything, my part in it. So it's just like it stays in this endless loop of this problem is going to bother me every time it comes up forevermore. If I just stay in the venting place, so I'm frustrated, so I'm going to let it out. The next time it happens, I'm going to get frustrated again. What we're talking about here is breaking those cycles, being there's something about this situation that's disempowering, that, makes me feel hopeless, that makes me feel like there's nothing I can do. I want to acknowledge that of like, yeah, I might need to like release the tension through venting, but then it's also like we want to do this shift to be, well, like, what can I do better next time? And also, so future, and then also like, why does this affect me so much? Those are kind of two key questions. Okay, why does this affect me? Okay, so my parents did this, or, I was disappointed. I feel like something was taken away from me, or whatever it is, right? It's like, or I feel like my work's not valued, or, there's a million different versions of that, but it's going to be something that doesn't feel good to me. So yeah, it might feel like my self-worth is taking a hit, or I was disrespected, or any of those types of things. It's like it puts me in this negative state. And we can leave it there. And that's what honestly most people do, is we keep the same stories going forever. And we don't actually move past it. And then we wonder why we're stuck. So it's because we're not allowing ourselves to fully feel those emotions. So if I'm really frustrated and something keeps happening, the first step is awareness. I want to be like, yo, I want to question, why does this keep happening? Why do I keep feeling this way? That kind of thing. And then these are leading questions. It's like taking us down a path. When I ask why, I'm gonna have to go into the emotion to try and discover what's behind it. Because these are just subconscious cues, like things are getting kicked to the surface, but we don't know what the core is. We don't know what the root is yet. So I have to open up the emotion and I have to explore it. Be like, well, this is a repeated thing that I keep seeing over and over again. And if I'm going to change, I have to change my perception. I have to change my story. I have to change my relationship, which is going to be the feeling based part of like, I need to show up differently in this situation in order to get a new result. And that's common sense. If I want a different result, I'm probably going to have to do something different. So with this work, we're trying to get to not living by default of just, oh, things are happening to me all the time and I have no control. This mode, no, like I can control how I show up. I can control I can work on the things I'm feeling inside to feel better. As I do that process, I'm going to show up stronger and I'm going to be more equipped to handle those things. And I'm going to have more power in those situations to move forward towards a desire that's going to serve me better, a result that's going to serve me better. But is this, we go into the emotion by asking it questions, so where did this come from? What does this remind me of? We do that a lot. What does this
Yeah.
situation remind you of? And then it's always going to be something from childhood, or sometimes it's high school, sometimes it's like, some big disappointment happened. And this trigger, this emotion is actually just showing you a wound you have to heal. That's what it's really actually about. It's not about the situation. The present day is activating things from your past. That's all it's doing. I'm not actually present with the situation. I'm functioning as if I was, 5 years old or whatever it is, like mentally and emotionally. It's a maturation process. I want to mature my emotions and my mindset around these situations so that I can show up in the present day, like fully embodied and just be here with it. Right. And so as I'm maturing my emotions, that is the learning process. That is actually how I gain wisdom. That's how I become more effective. That's how I become more efficient. Is I'm like seeing my way through these situations in a way that's not just me running on a loop from my past, because that's really what it is. And so our emotions, that's our cue. If I feel something intensely, that means there's a lot of pain behind it. And that pain's probably not from today. It's probably very old. If something isn't a big deal to me, that means I'm pretty clean in that area. That means I haven't really had too many disappointments, letdowns, pain from that specific area. Okay. So, and we all notice that, right? Sometimes there's things that can just roll right off of us. And then there's other things that we get caught up a little bit more. If I get caught up more, there's a history of things that have happened to me that point to the same conclusion about how this situation isn't, I don't have confidence here. I don't feel valued here, and I don't produce good results here.
Okay. So this week I was working with a group and something we talked about last week came up and it's sort of tied into this. But how it came up, last week I asked you about, well, what's the tips for not reverting, right? And you
Mhm,
said, well, you're going to. So first is like the acceptance of it. This is a
mhm.
little bit the same idea, right? So it's about we have to feel that, we have to accept it. But is there anything as you're going through this that can help you move through, oh, I'm like questioning how to say this exactly because I think I know what you're going to say. I'm going to say it anyway because this is how the question was posed to me. But is there anything that can help you like move through it faster? Like if you're like, I need to be able to get from, I know I need to work through it, but I need to get through A to B faster. I can't spend 72 hours or a week or whatever it is.
That's why we have outside people, right? That somebody
Yeah.
that's not attached to the situation, where they can kind of see like your flaws in your thinking. That's not like emotionally wrapped up in it with you. But that's kind of a common problem with like friends, like, venting to each other is it
Hmm.
just keeps all the same patterns in play, right? Where because both people, if you care about somebody, generally there's like some empathy where I'm actually like feeling what they're feeling.
Yeah.
And so we just keep spinning in this story about how I got screwed over or whatever it is, right? So that's the thing, you kind of need this like objective person to this like accountability or holds you responsible to what you feel. That's having somebody to hold that. They call it holding space, like kind of in
Right.
the spiritual community is like, oh, I'm just going to sit here with you and I'm going to listen. I'm going to guide you through it. And that just means like I'm not attached to whatever you're going through. So I can see it differently than you can. That's generally the fastest way we can do that. And that's the whole purpose of meditation, and why I went so extreme on it is because it doesn't require anybody else. Is I'm just going to sit with something and I'm going to try and disarm it. I'm going to try and work through it. I'm going to try and see it to this place where it's neutral and I'm gaining like insights and wisdom every step of the way. All these things are a practice. It's like once I become more conscious, now I start to notice when I feel off pretty rapidly. And so, I'm like increasing my sensitivity actually, but that increased sensitivity allows me to move through things faster over time because when I feel things more intensely now, I want to go work on that as fast as possible rather than I want to sit in this. When we have this motivation to be like, well, I know I just have to get to the other side of these emotions, and then there's going to be a gift for me at the end of it. It's kind of like the treasure at the end of the rainbow or whatever, right? It's like, oh, I
Sure.
just have to get
Yeah.
to that. There's always going to be something to learn from this. So I start to associate this positive relationship with feeling my heavy emotions. That's actually how I level up. That's how I get better. That's how I get stronger. That's how I get happier. Is like I address my emotional needs. Because many of us, we're told our emotions don't matter and we need to suppress them. And, in the business world, they're not allowed or whatever it is. And so all these things, it's like that all prevents growth because it's just like, well, the one thing that's giving you information to learn from, like you're telling yourself it's not okay to learn from that. It's this huge conflict of like, yeah, that's the very reason you're stagnant is because the emotions are stuck. Emotions are energy in motion. If I stagnate them, if I suppress them, if it's not okay for them to flow, now I'm actually not moving. I'm just running on this hamster wheel. If I unlock the emotions and kind of go for that ride, the heavier stuff definitely probably needs somebody to work through with the most intensive things we've ever felt in our life. We probably don't want to go through that alone. Okay. That's where we need a guide. Most things like subtle annoyances, things like that. It's because of the emotions not so tense. Like I can get to more an objective place with that faster because it's just like, or I just might need to run it by somebody else. Like, it doesn't have to be a big process if it's just kind of a subtle thing, but the bigger stuff generally needs some type of support. And so just kind of seeing that how I'm relating to something, and if it's not moving, if it's stuck, well, I need to feel more around that area because that's going to be my information needed to get to my next level with it.
I think one thing you said there is worth repeating or taking a note on, and that I hadn't necessarily thought of until you literally just said it. And that is that emotions are energy in motion. I think that's I don't know. I just think that's worth noting as a way to think about it. Maybe that
Mhm.
helps with the permission.
Yeah, and it's like so but our conscious mind, like we can stop things. So I can stop the flow. If I consciously focus on something and I say like, no, that's not okay. Now I stagnated the energy. And so we feel that in our nervous system as a contraction. If I reject something, my body contracts. That doesn't allow like anything to flow from that place. All these things are quite literally like we do control things with our mind, right? It's like, oh, like this isn't allowed, so I'm going to suppress it. And now my body's tense and stressed. If we're not allowing things the space to move, that's what happens. And then it's not okay, so I'm going to suppress it and I'm going to pretend it doesn't exist, but it does exist, and there's actually pain underneath there, and so that's going to be creating all these distortions in how I'm operating my life. That's when I've suppressed so much that I'm totally dissociated from what I feel. Now feedback doesn't even help me because I've refused to even look at it. So it's just like all this stuff's like stacked up. And so people get delusional in that place where they're not in tune with reality because their version that they're telling themselves is totally detached from what's actually going on. And so you'll see this a lot with like emotional intelligence, like where people can be like really awkward and bad with other people, right? But then like in their mind, it's always that other person's fault, right?
Right.
But it's the energy they're showing up to the situation. That's what the reality is. If I'm tense and anxious and all that stuff, but if I've totally suppressed and dissociated from my emotions, I'm not in tune with anything going on. I'm just stuck in my head and whatever it's telling me. Accepting responsibility is actually accepting responsibility for what you feel because that's where our story is. That's where all these unresolved things are. On some level, I have to address those because the more I suppress them, it's just the more numb I get. And over time, that starts to add up to, like health complications, all sorts of things, right? Because we have chronic stress is what leads to everything. So if I have this stress in place that I refuse to look at, that stress is going on 24/7 in my entire life. I might not be in tune with it, but it's there. And you'll
Mhm.
see this in the way people's, body language, they're going to be very tight. They're going to be locked up, right? Like, cause they're not in their body. Like everything's just suppressed,
Sure.
so, and, the interesting thing, with athletes and stuff like that, it's kind of interesting to kind of dive deeper into that being, well, okay, you're limiting yourself and it's actually showing up in how you move. And this is like a mental pattern. So this mind body connection is super important. And well, there's so many layers and levels to it. The way I address this is, well, if it's causing tension, there's something to learn there, and we want to unpack it and not leave it in a negative place. And if we neutralize the emotion, one, my mind returns back to peace, and I start to see that situation more objectively or clearly. But then also my body relaxes, so I'm reducing stress in that process. The stress is kind of the main focus here. If I'm in prolonged stress, that wreaks havoc on like every area of my life. If I'm cutting off the energy flow, now I can't connect to people. I can't relate to them because I'm so shut down that I'm not empathic. Like this is where you're going to see somebody that's like really self-absorbed and just only cares about themselves, right? Is like their body's so shut down they can't like feel other people.
Yeah. Yeah. That's so interesting.
So that's what's like beautiful about this work is it checks 100 boxes at one time if you just kind of work through it. If you just
Yeah.
allow yourself to feel and you dive into those emotions and you understand them better, or you have somebody guide you through them. I'm learning, I'm growing, I'm more relaxed, I'm more at peace. I can connect to other people better. My relationships are better. My relationship with everything is better. It's like career, people, money, whatever it is. I start to be more calm and relaxed around things. And that's what presence is. Like I'm just present. I'm not functioning from my past anymore. Okay. It's just like this integration process of like, well, this was stuck in a bad place. I worked on it. Now I'm at peace with it. And I gained all this knowledge and growth and abilities and skills from that. It's all just like a win-win. It's better for your health. It's better for everything. That's what the importance of feelings is. It's like it has a positive impact. If you allow yourself to move through them, it can have a positive impact on everything. But that's different than being stuck in your feelings. You're stuck in your feelings is you feel intense things, but then you just keep telling yourself the same story over and over again. That's very bad. It's a negative story. So now it's just like I'm on this loop and I don't know how to get out of it. And I just get more and more miserable. There are things that, we all have some intensity behind them. That's where we need like help or a guide or somebody to be like, hey, like this is how we're going to break this pattern because that's what it is. We're stuck on a loop, but our mind's only just trying to protect us. It's just telling us a story because that's what kept us safe at one point. But that also might be what's making us miserable right now. There's definitely the intensity is an important idea here of like, if something's really intense, no, you probably don't want to be like opening that door by yourself. That's where we need some support.
Yeah. I think that for me, I definitely wouldn't be in the place that I'm at today had you and I not gone through it together. Had I tried to go through it alone, there's things I would have avoided that you and I
Mhm.
talked through. So yeah.
Well, it's just so much faster. It's the reason I've taken the path I have is to hold that space and to accelerate the process for other people. So unless you want to take the path I've taken or something similar, right? I dove like headfirst into all my emotions for years, right? And it was miserable. And yeah, I mean, the other times were, yeah, I felt a little suicidal and like, it's like terrible, deep, dark thoughts. But it's like I knew what I was doing though. I know I just need to get through to the other side. Okay. And there's always gifts on the other side. I had support, many times throughout that, right? I had people I could call that, hey, I'm really stuck on something. I'm not sure how to get through this one. I don't think anybody can do it alone fully. It is just really, really intense. I'm also not recommending that everybody just like obsess and dive into their emotions all the time like I did. That's so I could do this work for other people. I would say work on what's relative to your life. Work on the things that are most important to you. If I'm blocked, if I'm stuck and I really want something, like yeah, I might need to dig a little bit deeper in some area. And it doesn't have to be every single area of your life. So I've trained myself at this point. It's like all day, every day. Like part of me is focused externally, part of me is focused internally. I'm paying attention to how everything makes me feel all the time. And so I'm working things out all day, every day within myself. That's just like I can't go back anymore. Like I've been doing it so long that this is just my natural state. But that's the thing. It's like not everybody needs to be that way. If you're avoiding it altogether, you're probably stagnant. You're probably struggling in some areas. There's things that could benefit from paying a little bit more attention to what you feel. Also, like allowing yourself to feel it and go through the full gamut of what that feels like. We have a lot of stigma around all these things, like depression, anxiety. They're all just cues, right? Like so, depression just means there's nothing externally I can do to fix this situation. I need to like rework things internally. Sometimes we need some downtime to really kind of sort our thoughts out and sort what we feel. Our body got overloaded due to something, and I can't continue on the same path. And so that's going to be more of a shutdown. And that can actually be like a very productive time, like if you use it properly. It always starts with the desire to, I don't want to feel this way anymore, right? I want to feel better. That's the things, we have to attach to the brighter future. That's how we get through anything is I need to have something forward looking that's like pulling me out of it. We're going into emotions with the purpose of improving and getting better, not I'm diving in the emotions to, just because and then like I don't know what I'm doing and now I'm stuck in them and everything's hopeless. Like, that's not the proper way to do that stuff.
Right. So I know you work with a lot of athletes, but when we think about processing through this, I know for me personally, there's times where maybe I'll go do some sort of run that has a bunch of intensity in it with the sole purpose of taking something off or killing something, so to
Mhm.
speak, that feels bad. Talk a little bit about how that works.
Yeah, I mean, it's getting into your body because that's where all this stuff's stored, and so it's a great example of kind of setting an intention of, yeah, like I'm gonna take this idea into my run or my workout session, and through movement, I am kind of working through the emotions simultaneously, and that can be of great value. And I would say, that maybe doesn't get us as deep as to the bottom of something because we're actively engaged with something else too. So it's going to be a good way to shave some layers off of it. I know that, yeah, a lot of times if I'm struggling with something, I'll go work out and then my mind like starts to shift while I'm in that process. And so, that's exactly what we're talking about here. It's like I'm feeling it, but I'm also moving through it. So my mind's shifting about it. Okay. So those are all the keys. But you have extremes here where it's a lot of athletes, they're actually addicted to working out. Like they use it to run away from a lot of their problems. Like, I don't like this situation, so I'm just gonna go work out for hours on it. There's a balance to all this stuff where it's like, yeah, like how am I using these tools? Everything could be a positive or a negative expression of it. If I set this intention of like, I'm going to use this workout to try and work through these emotions and get to a better place with them, that's different than I don't want to feel these emotions. And so I'm going to go work out. So the one's still suppression, but it's because I'm not giving myself permission to feel it. But it's a fine line with working out because we view it wholly as a positive thing. But if I bury myself in working out, where I might not actually be, it might be a different mode than me actually working through the emotion unless I have that intention behind it. That's going to be kind of a, yeah, we might need to burn some energy off with intensity, but then the intensity isn't going to be the same thing as me shifting my mind about something and actually like letting it go. That's going to be the other side of the nervous system, which is kind of that rest or digest thing. So, so I might be able to, if it's got a lot of energy behind it, I might be able to move through some of it. But that the important piece is the perception shifts that we're after with it. So I need to find a way to look at it that neutralizes it. And that's going to be depersonalizing from the emotion. I'm letting it go by shifting how I relate to the situation. And it's very subtle. Yeah.
One of the things you make me think of, and I've talked about this with friends several times, is this idea of, because some of it's the ability to just sit and be with it, and we were trying to figure out what constitutes this. Maybe this is my own like work to go do about how can I sit and be with myself, which on some level sounds terrible. Sometimes I'll fill that space, right? Like, well, I'll go for a run by myself. So of course then I'm by myself. But to what you just said, that's maybe not actually fully the right thing.
Well, it's, if I'm all worked up, like I might just have to get some energy out.
Uh,
And that might actually, that might make put me in the space where I can see it differently just because like I've worked some of the energy out. But I would say like the fact of like kind of just, it's not necessarily an action oriented thing. It's me detaching and shifting my relationship with something. But I'm detaching because I'm not dissociating from the emotion. I'm going into the emotion and I'm depersonalizing it and I'm seeing my role and my participation in it. And so from that place, I'm learning about how to do that situation better in the future. That's the detachment that happens is I no longer see it as like specific to me because I've got the compassion and all the other pieces in there that I moved it all the way through and now I'm letting it go. It's very difficult to describe. I mean, they are very subtle differences. I would say generally, especially in America, like we really have this negative connotation with like just being, because it's like, even if I'm not doing anything like, or the TV's on, or I'm like looking at my phone or whatever it is, right? And it's just like this ability to just be bored or just sit with yourself and like have nothing you're trying to accomplish. That's where like kind of these deeper layers start to reveal themselves. It's just a deeper level that we can get to by just like doing nothing. That might sound, doing nothing doesn't really sit well with people because then we're very action oriented, and so that's, these are all like subtle like nuances of like, well, yeah, there are times where a workout, yeah, it can move something through properly, but if something's like a core issue, I don't think taking that into a workout's gonna get you deep enough to like that revelation because we're still like actively engaged with something because we're trying to get to a place of surrender. So that's the goal. So when we're at the bottom of something, I've completely let go of control. And that's like terrifying for certain cases, right? Where she's just like,
yeah.
oh, like I've been protecting myself from this my whole life, or this is, who I believe I am fully. And to like let that go, like kind of almost feels like a death. That's like the deeper layer where we get these like foundational shifts of like, I start to see things very differently because I allowed myself to go to the depths. The workout version, it can be good at, processing day-to-day stuff. And I would say getting down to the bottom of it is going to take a very slow approach that's very uncomfortable. Does that make sense now?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So, and that's why I work out, I'm healthy, blah, blah, blah. I mean, it's like, yes, those are all true, but there are layers to all these things. There's levels. And so to get to surrender, it is almost like a shutdown and like a reboot that happens.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's very uncomfortable. And,
Thank you for confirming the next
it's,
work that I need to be doing. Okay, got
I
it.
mean, yeah, I mean, once again, I don't, most of these things aren't very practical unless you want to become a completely different person. It's like, okay, yeah, I want to do a drastic career shift or, Yeah, maybe I'm in like a marriage or a relationship that I just realized like, oh, I can't do this anymore. So, and it's like these huge like life transitions. That's maybe where we need to go to like, okay, there's like might be something off at the foundational level that we got to get to. And, that might be like terrifying because some of these things, we may have built our whole life on something that might be false. That's really not easy to sit with in a lot of ways.
Okay, well, on that note, do do you want to go through any sort of like key points or
Yeah, I would say it's really just, it is so important to feel your emotions and start to build a healthy relationship with them. The suppressing and rejecting them, and that leads to more and more stress and kind of internal chaos over time because it's like we're not in tune with things. It starts to create this detachment from our life where we might just feel very numb inside after a while. It's allowing yourself to feel them, but then it's like building the muscle of I can feel this and I know I'll be okay on the other side. But it's these are all things that have happened in the past and they only have the power that we still give them. Okay, so one way to make some dramatic shifts is to allow yourself to feel things you've never felt before because there's so much locked up energy in that there could be tremendous growth in that piece. So I think it's just and when I say go with what you feel, it doesn't once again, you don't do it just to feel it and you're stuck in the emotion of it. It's like it's with the goal of I need to have something on the other side that I'm going through this for a purpose. So intention and purpose is key with all this work. I've always attached all these things to be this is how I level up. This is how I'm going to get better. This is how I'm going to improve. This is what's going to help me get on the big stage, right? All those things. Like I have to unpack these things in order because that's what's holding me back at the end of the day is these stuck emotions and then the story that I feed myself based on that tension and stress. So it is going to be self-worth stuff. It's going to be limitations and doubts. We unlock those things and we shift our relationship and start to form better beliefs about ourselves and self-image when we unlock those emotions and let them go and process them. So we all want the action all the time, but it is this kind of slower pace where we get very conscious and we can get super clear on who we are and what we want and all those good things. That's not happening, when I'm going through the motions, doing my day to day all the time. It does need to be some time that we set aside and we start with 5 minutes, and maybe build up to 15, 30, whatever it is. I never recommend spend half your day on it stuff unless it's like targeted like coaching work. We could do that. But we want to do things that are manageable. And then we want to target the things that are the most impactful and meaningful for us. And so that's just going to be where are my key desires and what do I feel is not possible for me in relationship to that? That's where I want to start to open these things up and question them.
all right, Brandon. So there was a lot in this one. If somebody's looking to go deeper with you or do that work on a deeper level, what's the best way for them to connect?
Yeah. So, like I said, with this work, there are some things that we can learn on our own, but really the support is where we accelerate the path and we can get into things much deeper and make it a lot easier for you. And so, if you're curious about this work, I do one-to-one coaching. You can go to brandonthilk.com. That's Thielk and schedule a free strategy session with me. And we can talk about what you've got going on and where you want to head. And so I also have the Lightning Lab, which is a group coaching program. And for this 3 months, we're working on authentic confidence. That's going to be 2 teaching sessions each month and 1 Q&A session. And then there's a community and weekly exercises to help you start to frame up, maybe where some growth can happen and get a deeper understanding of yourself. That you can join at any point. That's ongoing enrollment there. And you can also follow me at Evolved Athlete. I post there daily. So if you're interested in my work or want to go a little bit deeper, let's have a conversation.
Yeah.
So thanks for listening, guys. If you have any questions, this little intense information, we can unpack it a little bit more and continue to listen. It's just similar ideas. We're just going to hit different angles on trying to free you up from things that are creating stagnation from your past. So thanks again, and we'll talk to you next time.
Yeah, sounds good. We'll talk to you later, Brandon.
All right, bye.